What's up, faggots and faggorettes? I should have said faggorettes. This is the official first episode of MMA Talk 101 on this new British Kid V2 channel. So, the event that we will be going over today is UFC 143. So, the main event for this fight is Nick Diaz versus Carlos Condit for the interim welterweight championship. We got Roy Nelson versus Fabricio Werdum at the co-main event. We got Josh Koscheck and Mike Pierce, Renan Barao versus Scott Jorgensen, Ed Pee Wee Herman versus Clifford Starks, and those are really the top quality fights. This is on the main card. So let me just lend my opinion to the Josh Koscheck versus Mike Pierce fight. Now, first of all, I think both of these fights, I think Josh Koscheck is gonna win, but maybe not by much. Cause when you think about it, I don't really know who Mike Pierce is. But just looking at his win-loss record, he seems like one of those fighters that can get wins against, the gatekeeper fighters. The fighters who could, stay in the UFC but never win a championship or be a top contender. But as soon as he gets that leeway to fight a top contender, he just falls. So what I'm saying is, for his UFC debut, he beat Brock Lesnar, then lost to John Fitch at 107. Okay, he racked up a 3-win streak, then lost to Johnny Hendricks, and Johnny Hendricks wasn't even a top contender, which he is now. So, and then he just beat Paul Bradley. So, you see the pattern I'm talking about? He's one of those fighters that could rack up wins in a row against lower tier fighters, but as soon as he fights, sort of competition, they seem to fail. I've never seen the guy fight before. But Josh Koscheck, my favourite welterweight of all time. I love him. He's an asshole just like me. I love it. But I will have to say, I don't see any development in Josh Koscheck's game, and I wouldn't be surprised if he lost. Because the main reason is, Josh Koscheck was always a force to reckon with in the welterweight division. He beat the likes of Diego Sanchez. He beat Chris Lytle, Anthony Johnson, Frank Trigg, but he was old and stupid. Paul Daly. So, he had a 3-fight win streak when he fought GSP, and he got dominated. Now, that's nothing to be embarrassed about or anything of his GSP. GSP is the champion, and he has great takedown for a Canadian or whatever. And he's got good stand-up that he proved in the Koscheck fight. Now, Koscheck just recently got a win over Matt Hughes, which is impressive. Matt Hughes is he has the most wins in the UFC or whatever, and he has 2 separate 6-fight winning streaks, and he has wins over the likes of a whole lot of stars. So the reason why I'm not too impressed over Koscheck's win over Hughes is because Hughes is old. It's not surprising anymore seeing Hughes get knocked out in the first round by some lucky punch. I'm not surprised anymore. Back when he was in his prime, you were like, oh shit, Hughes knocked out, oh my goodness. Now it's like, okay, just knocked out Hughes or whatever. And to be honest, I didn't see too much development in Koscheck's game there either. Hughes, I guess he was landing a few punches, anything, but it wasn't that much of a domination. And Koscheck is one of those fighters, we could take it to boxing here. Zab Judah came back to boxing, and he beat lower tier fighters or fighters out of their prime, and they said, Zab is a changed fighter. As soon as he fought Amir Khan, he got his ass whooped. That's what they're kind of thinking about Koscheck. He's a changed fighter due to, that loss to GSP and shit, so he's changing. But it's not really. It's the same old Koscheck. But I still think Koscheck is going to take it just because not only he's had more experience with top contenders, but he's beaten some top contenders to add to that. So I say Josh Koscheck by decision. Somewhere along those lines. So, this fight hasn't even started yet. Now, the way I play these fights isn't how I intend it to go out. I just, make it so it's a video game aspect, I don't want to waste so much time or whatever. So, yeah. Hold on. So, I'm about to give you some MMA news and shit. So, Mike Tyson has been saying, this isn't really news, but Mike Tyson has been saying that, MMA is interesting because when you're in boxing, if your stand-up is trash, you're basically dead meat. In MMA, you know, what if you can take the guy to the ground and pound him? Doesn't mean he wants to do it, he's just saying it's interesting. And that's pretty nice coming from a boxer. Now, we had huge news like a few days ago surrounding Satoshi Ishii. You may know him as the guy that lost to Fedor recently at the newest Dream event, which was like 9 hours long. And I seen no place for that fight. You know, he was about 1-2 at the time. Didn't even have 5 bouts under him. And you know, Fedor just gets the fight because his management is shit. As soon as he loses to top competition, he's got to go back down and fight people like that. So it was saying that he had like brain damage or something with his nose and he'd be forced to retire. Then we had even more sudden news where, you know, he might die or something like that. Then Ryo Shonan or whatever, you know, he's very close to Ishii and he said, you know, all of that is false and shit. Now it could be just for covering up the loss or whatever, but he's really close to him, man. Ishii, it says hopefully Ishii suffered no long last effects in Fedor. And people were saying the fight was actually fixed. I don't think so. You know, Fedor crushed him. He didn't even have 5 professional bouts. I doubt the fight was fixed. So, I think we have time for one more MMA news before I talk about the next fight. Let's see. That's not interesting. That's not interesting. Okay, so Roy Nelson said that his past opponents told him they juice. He said, you just know, Nelson said, you know, by straight out asking him, if I can compete with them and they're using, it just means I'm a better athlete. He's been tested for steroids more than any fighter that's ever fought. It's like a football program. So, yeah, so he's just saying, you know, half the fighters that he's fought has juiced, and I think they told him or something like that. That's pretty interesting. But he doesn't reveal names. So, yeah, you see Josh Koscheck celebrating right there. The fight really won't end that quick, I doubt it. So, let's get the predictions for this next fight. So, the next fight is Roy Nelson versus Fabricio Werdum. And I have mixed reactions towards this. I think, for one, Fabricio Werdum is overhyped and should be overlooked. And for the other one, I think Roy Nelson needs to veer away from being that, you know, having that big belly. Like Dana White says, you know, the joke's not funny no more. You can't use that sometimes as an excuse for losing, and you just, you know, you gotta cut weight. There's a time when, if you're big, you gotta cut weight to keep in shape with all the other athletes. Now, we have seen Roy Nelson, he's been looking a little bit thinner, but, you know, he'll get there eventually. So what I think about this fight is, I think Roy Nelson's probably going to take this by, like, a knockout decision. Now, everyone recently hopped on Werdum's nuts because he submitted Fedor via triangle choke. As much as I don't like Fedor, I will tell you, that was the luckiest shit ever. Fedor rocked him, basically. It was in the, like, first few seconds of the round. And, you know, Fedor got careless, started grounding and pounding him, and then he got triangle choked. 9 times out of 10, that wouldn't happen, and Fedor would have finished the fight if he was just not careless. Sort of like the Gallard and Joe Lawson fight, if you think about it. So, you know, Werdum was known as a UFC reject before beating Fedor by that. You know, he had a unanimous decision loss to Arlovsky, and then he lost to Dos Santos by KO. The only 2 people that he has beat in the UFC is Brandon Vera and Gabriel Gonzaga. That's not really too impressive. So he was known as a UFC reject. No one, like, really cared about Fabricio or whatever. So, he recently lost to Alistair Overeem on the Strikeforce card, and you know, you could see by that fight that Werdum was a little too overconfident. You know, he's always said after that Fedor win, he watches that replay millions of times a day. But you can see by that Overeem fight, it was just like Werdum was just too overconfident. You know, whenever the fight went to the ground, he would just sit there and be like, you know, come over here. And he tried to get to the fight to the ground. And, you know, he just be too overconfident. Like, he thinks fighters aren't, doesn't know about his ground game. You know, he thinks every fighter is Fedor, and that's not true. Overeem did a lot of study in that fight, and he came away with the unanimous decision. The fight wasn't fireworks. Werdum did say he injured his hand or whatever in the second round. But injury in your hand, you know, you would have went to the ground regardless, because you just coming off of a win of fatal shit. So I think Roy Nelson would take this by like a KO decision. Now Roy Nelson isn't too hard either. He recently beat Mirko Cro Cop. Mirko Cro Cop's old and crusty, and he lost to unanimous decisions by Junior Dos Santos and Frank Mir. They weren't really dominations. They were fireworks, and that's one thing I think Fabricio can't produce. He's such a slow-paced fighter, and loves the submission game. And we all know Roy Nelson has a decent Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background too. He's not a loner in the BJJ game. So him trying to get in to the ground game with Roy Nelson might be even more of a stake. He might be biting off a little bit more than he can chew right there. So those are my predictions for the Roy Nelson versus Doom fight. I don't see Doom as pretty much a force to reckon with. He doesn't, all he has is that fatal win to his name really, and I guess, no, he doesn't have that, but he has the fatal to his win, and I guess he can be proud of that. But just know that not every fighter's like Fatal, where they're gonna come to the ground. Like if you go on the ground or whatever, they seen the Fatal fight. It was like the most talked about thing. So yeah. Now let's get the predictions in for the big motherfucking fight. Nick Diaz vs Carlos Condit. The Natural Born Killer takes on the Stockton, whatever the fuck you call him. So Nick Diaz, I think Diaz is gonna take this. Diaz will either take this by decision or TKO. People are really hyping up Carlos Condit, and I find it funny. It seems like with the MMA fans nowadays, they look at if a fighter gets like 2-3 knockouts in a row, they completely disregard his last fights and call him a force in the division. Now let's go through this really quick. Now Carlos Condit has wins over some stars. He beat Rory McDonald, which I'll get into more after this. He beat Jake Ellenberger, who's known as a contender for the welterweight championship. Jake Ellenberger just knocked out Jake Shields. He beat Dan Hardy by KO, and he beat Dong Yong Kim. I don't think Dong Yong Kim's that good. All Asians to me don't have a chin, and Kim just has wrestling. He definitely showcased, how much improved his stand-up is, but I don't think he'll ever win the title or really be a contender. So yeah, he only has one loss in the UFC to start with, and that's by Martin Kampmann, a split decision. This was also his debut, so you get those octagon jitters, especially it's your first fight in the UFC. So let's with Carlos Condit, the thing about him is his KO wins aren't over like opponents too impressive. Okay, Dan Hardy, he's got a chin, he loves to fight, he's the outlaw, doesn't like the ground fights, loves the stand-up fights, but I mean it's Dan Hardy. After his loss to GSP, he just went down in the division. He's getting beat by everybody. Rory McDonald, he was getting dominated by McDonald the whole fight, and then came out with a TKO win in Roy McDonald's hometown with just 7 seconds left to spare in the last round. Roy McDonald was coasting his way to a decision, and you can see that it was probably a lucky thing, because after that Roy McDonald has dominated Nate Diaz and Mike Powell in brilliant fashion. So I disregard that win. A win is a win, but I disregard that. Then Dong Yong Kim, he's not really anybody. He recently improved his stand-up, but we noticed that with wrestlers, if you have another wrestler that's better than you and you don't have anything to fall back on like stand-up or BJJ, you're fucked. So let's go into Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz is like a UFC veteran. He was in the UFC a while ago. He lost about 3 times, and he's gotten wins over the likes of Robbie Lawler and Joel Schneer, Gleason Tibau. Not really quality wins, other than the likes of Lawler. But after that, he's on a 10-win streak or something like that. He's beaten the likes of Scott Smith, Frank Shamrock, KJ News, Paul Daly, BJ Penn by decision. I think Diaz is going to take this with surgical precision, and it'll be way too easy. People are overhyping Condit way too much just because of his knockout power. We know Diaz has a chin. You know, we know he can take punches. He may have gotten rocked by Paul Daly in that fight, but we know he can take punches. We know he can get back up. The only thing I see stopping Diaz in this fight is a doctor's stoppage. Because Diaz has something with his eyebrow where he gets easy cuts there. And that's what screwed him out of the first fight with KJ Noons. And that's really only if this fight is also fireworks too. And I doubt they'd stop it like that, mainly because this is a main event. And if Mark Hominick could have that big ass bump on his forehead and look like a creature, I doubt they'd stop it over a cut. Just look at Marvin Eastman versus Vitor Belfort. Now that's brutal. So I think Nick Diaz is going to take this with surgical precision. Easy. Not really easy fight. But I think people are just overhyping Condit way too much. Now I am excited to see this fight. But I'm not like in a position where, you know, I'm scared for one of the fighters. Because I like both of these fighters. You know, they saying Condit's a candidate for GSP. You need to fucking stop. Condit's wrestling is okay, but just please stop. Let's see him fight Roy McDonald again first, okay? And let's get through this fight. So, thank you for watching MMA Talk 101 Episode 1. Next time, what I want to do is I think the next UFC event is on Fuel. Yeah, Sanchez versus Ellenberger, and this will be the day after UFC 3 comes out, so it'll be much easier to do these. I won't have to use any crappy created fighters as you see showcased here. So it'll be more easy, and that's gonna be a fight. Ed Herman. Oh, Dave Herman. Okay, so disregard what I said about Ed Pee Wee Herman. I'm getting him and Dave Herman mixed up. So it's just Ed Herman versus Clifford Starks. I'm thinking of the other Herman or whatever. So yeah, Ed Herman versus Clifford Starks, not Ed Pee Wee Herman. That's Dave Pee Wee Herman. So thank you for watching MMA Talk 101 Episode 1. Comment, rate, subscribe. Watch my Gears videos. BKV2. BKNG.
The Hurricane has won the fight. This will go down as a night to remember, as the UFC, once again, delivered an outstanding night of fights. For my partner Joe Rogan, and all of us at the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Mike Goldberg saying so long until next time, we see you right back here, inside the Octagon.